What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Screams and Sorrows. Today, I'm with Melissa, aka Shadow Rose. She is someone that I've known for quite some time now in the internet space, an amazing digital artist, also a streamer. She helped me out, actually create the Elder E-Monk logo that I have, which I think is very beautiful. And she's with me here today to talk about Imminence and their fifth album, The Black. How are you doing, Melissa?
Welcome. Yes, good. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this specifically because Imminence, I know, is a band that you actually turned me on to. This is a band that you have been following for some time now?
Yeah, about just over a year and a half, so I am pretty much still new at it as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, a little bit about the album. The album, as I mentioned, is their fifth release. The band has been together since 2009. I would describe them as metalcore, but I think they have definitely pushed more into like symphonic metalcore, especially with this album. I like how, especially in metal, everyone likes to put core after something. And I hear people calling this band violin core now, which I think is hilarious.
I love that.
Right? I mean, it works, right? And this is a self-produced album, which I found interesting. They were with Arise Empire, I think, for their last release, and they decided to self-produce this. And honestly, you know, I was pretty impressed with the overall production of it. The album did release on April 12th, and I know that at least within my space of like metal fans, like everyone has been really highly anticipating this album. So I'm gonna be very curious to see, did they live up to the hype? So I'm actually going to throw it over to you first, Melissa. What did you think about Imminence the Black?
Well, my first impression of the album was, to me, it is a masterpiece piece of art. I will say that. And the more I listen to it, the more that I do look at it that way. I do love the combination of the metalcore with the violin and the classical pieces that they put in. Because I'm a lover equally of both genres. I love classical as much as I love heavy, so seeing that is like really my thing with music. So.
I remember listening to Imminence for the first time and saying, because I grew up listening to pop punk, like, hey, this is like Yellow Card, but of metalcore. And yeah, I agree with you. I think the overall thoughts that I had for this album is that it's beautiful, it's haunting, very creative. I will say I felt it's a little bit disjointed. But the structure of the overall album, even though I feel it was a little bit disjointed, doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that I do think this is definitely a very creative masterpiece of an album. And so far, probably one of my favorite albums of the year.
No, I definitely, it is on my list of one of my favorite albums of the year as well. Last year was their other one, Heaven in Hiding. Yeah, I mean, when I think back listening to it, it does get to a point where I'm like, I could probably skip a couple, but I do continue to listen to them. Some songs I think might be better in a different order, but for what it is amazing.
Yeah, and that's you bring up like an interesting point here with kind of the order of the songs, and especially when we get to like the instrumentals, I want to talk about that a little bit more. But I do feel like this album is kind of like two halves where they had like a very clear idea of what they wanted kind of each part of the album to be, but they seem to be almost different in execution. And I guess we'll just kind of start right there. The first half of the album, as much as I enjoyed, I do feel it to be more of kind of generic metalcore that you would expect, except they have the added element of violin, which elevates it just that little bit to make it interesting. Without the violin in those first like 4 to 5 tracks, I don't know if it really would have stood out to me outside of a lot of different things. I know it's called Come Hell or High Water. Not my favorite track on the album, but I think it is a great start to the album. It really sets a tone. It's slow, it's moody. I do feel it sets like a great, I'm going to repeat it, I guess, a tone for what you're going to come to expect in the album.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree with that. As much as I do think of the whole thing as a piece of art, it is mainly due to the use of the violin as to why I have that opinion, and also the videos that accompanied the tracks that it did as well, due to the storytelling and the aesthetic behind that. From the metal side of it in itself, I do agree. Very basic in normal, just double kicks, guitar work. It is, yes. So if you strip the violin from it, it wouldn't have stood out for me as much as it does.
All right, cool. So what was your favorite song of the album?
Um, Very hard. I would equally go with Death by a Thousand Cuts and The Black, actually.
Really
Yes.
interesting. Okay, and I kind of want to dive into that a little bit because Death by a Thousand Cuts, although I liked it, I definitely wouldn't have ranked it in my top because I felt that one was the main offender of being the most just kind of, I won't say the word generic because it's not by any means, but just more, I've heard this type of song a million times before. What is it about that song that really stood out to you?
The pace of the sound lyrically, I love the lyrics of that and how the vocals are. You can really hear the despair and the passion he puts behind those lyrics. I'm very much into poetry as well, so yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, so and maybe I have to go back and listen to it more from like the poetic standpoint. Like we're talking specifically about like the lyrics and kind of the overall message of the song itself, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, and for what that meant to me at the time as well. So it does really stand out in how he delivered that. And I do also say that hearing the ones he does of like the one takes of the tracks as well.
Drowning in my mind, I keep waiting for death to take me. I keep hoping for you to save me.
That's interesting. Yeah, because the song that I had that feeling for was actually Come As May, where that is, I think, if not their first, it is their first like 6 minute song of the album, which in general most of the songs on this album are pretty long. And I think it's because of that symphonic element. They all kind of run like 4 to 5 minutes, but there's a couple like 6 minute songs, and this was one of those. But this to me was the turning point of the album, where right before that it was Death by a Thousand Cuts, and up until then my favorite song was probably Beyond the Pale, and that's just because I'm a guitar player and I love a great riff, and I feel like that just had a crazy great riff. It was metalcore, but metalcore kind of like done right. You know, the chugging, the chorus with the layer of the violins and the screams, the riff that kind of lined into the end of that. It was a song that just continued to build for me. And it was one that I remember it came on in the car and I was immediately just like, oh yeah, started to like headbang and everything. By the end, I was like, pumping my fist and everything. I'm like, okay, this is getting me excited. But Come As May, even though it kind of started with that kind of typical metalcore feel, it was more aggressive. I felt like the drums in that song really, really shined, and it just continued to build. And there was, I think, about 2/3 of the way through where things just kind of stop, and then we get like a violin solo. And then electronic drums. And then the song builds and then it stops again and then it comes in with the drums and the guitar and the violin. I mean, I think I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that song right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree because we haven't touched on lyrics either. In that song, I would also include that. I love the lyrics in that song as well. So, in the Come What May song.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot. Do you, because this is my thing, I have a hard time with lyrics, and maybe it's because because I play guitar, I always focus on the music first. Do you remember what the song talks about?
Oh, no. You put
No?
me on the spot. No, I would have to go back and quickly listen to it, but it is the whole dismay comment in the
Yeah.
main chorus.
Which is, you know, I don't know if you know this, but there's actually like people that kind of, I guess in a way, make fun of Imminence, that the titles of their songs are always in the chorus of their songs, where they like they'll say the full name of the title of the song within it, which I don't get that being an issue. I mean, I actually like that, hey, this is what the song is called, and they're actually saying that in the song. But Come As May, I don't remember him ever really saying that. I think it's more, I remember more the This May part that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, yes. And you know, they do actually, because he, but in a different order as well, like track 2, the Desolation one, he does say, "This is the Black, there's no coming back," which kind of another little intro into the whole The Black album. So he
Yeah.
does say that a fair bit.
Awesome. And I know you mentioned earlier about the videos themselves, and I kind of want to touch on that because you actually went back and listened or watched the videos, and you were the first one who clued me in, being like, hey, each one kind of has some symbolism, and all of these videos tie together. And it's something I hadn't noticed, even though I've been reacting to these videos. Like, I saw the symbols, but I never kind of clued together that maybe there's an overarching theme here. How did you discover that?
Oh, I'm just very much into symbolism, so I just kind of started noticing after the first 2 tracks about the keys and the doors and the circle that they had, and then each one getting like a little addition. And it does fulfill after the 5 symbols, the 5 tracks the videos are for, but each key unlocks the next pathway to the next journey or door.
So have you figured out at all kind of like what that journey is, or kind of what's happening?
For me personally, and I only say this interpreting it my own way, for me it's about life, death, time, and hope, actually. When I watch them all in that order, that's what I think it is. He keeps trying, keeps losing the key, finding the key, going through to the next door, and he never loses hope, and he does go through these pathways into the last one, being that Continuum song, where he enters the white door and kind of like free. So,
Okay. So what is the black?
well, I don't know about that.
No?
But no, the whole thing to me is just mainly about life and hope.
Life and hope.
Yeah. To me, I sum it up as life and hope.
Oh, okay. Life, hope, and like how does time, do you feel like, play into it?
Well, they have the symbolism in there with like the hourglasses, the time, even the lyrics in some of the songs with chasing time, and yeah, you just kind of have hope and keep going.
I'm gonna have to go back and like watch these again and like listen to the album again, and this time focus specifically on the lyrics instead of like the guitars and the chugging and all that kind of stuff, because that's super interesting. I always think it's really cool when an album has like a theme to it, even if it's like an underlying theme. It's not something that has to necessarily be a concept, but they've done this before. Like, have you listened to all of their previous albums?
I have, yes. Heaven in Hiding a bit too much, but the ones previously, I did really like them, but I don't listen to them as much as these past 2.
Yeah, because Jaded was the very first song that I listened to them, and I remember liking that one a lot. Then I went back and listened to their previous album, and then I've been keeping up with every release except for Continuum. That was one song. Continuum and The Black were 2 songs that they released that I didn't listen to, because at that time I wasn't really reacting. I was busy with like a new job, so I didn't really keep up with it. And I said, you know what, the new album is coming out. I might as well just wait, listen to the whole thing together. And I'm kind of glad I did, because I kind of feel Continuum, even though it's it's like the second to last song on the album, if I'm not mistaken. Not my favorite.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree. If out of the whole album, like I know a lot of people actually love this song. In all the comments I've read, it's a lot of people's favorites. For me, it was just a bit slower than the rest, which when I did re-listen to it, I'm like, makes sense if you do pay attention to the videos and like what they're trying to say with like the time of slowing down. It just feels like you're in this like case. You get to that song, it slows down, and you kind of almost, well, I feel like I wanted to just hurry up and get through it, and then it slows down again. So it's like, just slow down and just, it's all right, and then finish it.
Yeah, I mean the song I think is great in itself. I think it also loses momentum within the album because it's also capped by like instrumental pieces that take place, I think, right after it, and then The Black,
Yes.
and then another one right after it again, which in itself, the instrumental pieces I think are beautiful, and I love the tone that it sets for the album. The Black, even though again not my favorite song on the album, I think it is a perfect cap to the album. Even though the instrumental at the end is essentially, I guess, the final song. As far as songs that have lyrics to them, I think The Black does a very good job, just like Come Hell and High Water, to really end the album and transition into the instrumental there at the end. But I do feel that we lose some momentum there at the end, where it's much slower, more about what's the word? Like feeling, I guess, like more emotional.
That's what it gets, and that's what I love about it, is the way that it does draw the emotion out when you do listen to it. That is the parts I love the most, is all those violin pieces and those classical ones, as that is where I reflect. Actually, that's where I reflect on, like, say, the one I just heard, and I start to visualize the whole story. So I love those pieces because of that. The Black, to me, does summarize the whole album, though. When you do listen to the lyrics of that, the way it does, it states kind of things that happened in the videos, actually. So I think it summarizes it quite well, because it has a lot to do with elements. Like, you'll notice the first two have a lot to do with water, with like the ocean, and then there's the fire with the cave, and then there's the earth desert in Death by a Thousand Cuts, and then there's that like smoky cloud of air. So I feel like it's very, very touched on the elements of the earth and the universe.
That's awesome.
That's how I interpret it anyway. I was like, hang on, there's water, there's fire, there's earth, and there's like air, and it's like in the water. So
I'm glad I brought you on for this then, because like I would have not picked up any of that. I would just be here telling you like, oh, it's I really like, the guitar work here, and I like the little chuggy moments, and I like the breakdowns, and when he screams, that makes me happy,
Same, just I pick up on that stuff too, and aesthetically I just find all their stuff just amazing. Like, it's totally up my alley.
Yeah.
So.
You did mention though there is a song here you skip. I got to know, which one is it?
If I don't, but if I'm not feeling it, it is the Continuum one, because it does slow down too much, but I do like the end violin piece. So it's just a bit slow, and I actually love just going straight to the instrumental pieces and then the Black.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Interesting that you would actually skip Continuum. And I know not all the time, just it would be maybe one that you would skip at some point. I don't know, honestly, if there's one on here that I would skip. Death by a Thousand Cuts kind of maybe it. It's a fun song. But like I said, it just kind of feels like something I've listened to like so many times before.
That's so good.
Maybe. And the instrumentals, you mentioned that you really like those, and I did too. I think I had just one main complaint with the instrumentals. One is I kind of would have liked them to maybe tie in or build into the next song versus it just kind of, taper off, cut off, and go into the next. I see why they did it. They're treating it as its own song and not necessarily as an interlude.
I guess it depends when and how, because for me, it really does start the storytelling and your own interpretation of visualizing. It's like that little break where you do get to kind of make up your own story of the next part. Like, I do that, so that's why I like them. So I feel like they're good in that aspect.
Interesting.
Yeah, I really do sit there, like, when you're just listening, no distractions, that's what I do. I get in that mindset, create my own story to the rest of what I've heard.
Do you feel those ones you kind of need to hear them in the context of the entire album, or would any of these instrumentals be something you just listen on their own?
I do. So when I was listening to it before, I thought I'd just kind of see where I naturally kind of fell with that, and yes. So I do purposely pick to play song 10. Might not say this correctly, but the Lapel du Vide one. Then listen to the Black, yes, but then the Le Noir as well. So I do pick those as well because I do love just that kind of music as well.
All right, so you do really want to listen to both of them together. You kind of feel like they complement each other.
I do, yes, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. I know Cul-de-sac is probably the only instrumental on here that I don't care for too much. Not a lot happens in it, I think. It builds
bizarre.
maybe. Yeah.
It's bizarre, but it's good before the Call of the Void one. Like, if you do listen and uncover, like, yourself what they mean to you, like, you'll see where it comes from with the whole visualization part behind it. And they do end up fitting. If you treat the whole thing as a story.
And you kind of have to, right? Yeah, because when I remember when it first came on, I was like, okay, where are we going with this? I expected it to be like 40 seconds long, but it's like 2.5 minutes long. And it's like very kind of repetitive. It does build, but I was like, okay, where are we going with this? And then Call of the Void comes on, which was actually, if I had to choose my top three songs, for me was Come As May, Beyond the Pale, and Call of the Void. And Call of the Void, the reason why it stood out to me is because I do enjoy a lot of symphonic metal. Actually, my brother-in-law, he has a band called Operas, and they do exactly that, symphonic metal. When they started, it was, two guitars, bass, but they had a cello. They had no, they didn't have violins, but yeah, they had the cello. That was their thing. And the singer, he has kind of like that very operatic feel to it, which I did enjoy. But what I really liked hearing was like the strings with kind of your more, not power metal, but just, I guess the genre is like symphonic metal, right? In general. And when Call of the Void came on, this one was fast. The riffs were fast. The symphonic pieces really, really stood out. And the violin in this one specifically just elevates this song to another level. Like the violin work in this specific song for me was just like chef's kiss. I loved it.
No, that's really great. I mean, I feel that way about the ending to the whole ending, like from 4 minutes 31 seconds in from memory, to the end. That's just like, I'm like, just more like that just is the best part of the whole album for me, actually, is that piece.
Do you have any thoughts of what I mean? Imminence just released their album, so it's kind of shitty to say like what's next for them. I think they're a band that has kind of put themselves on the map this year with this album. I think they've done a good job catering to two audience, kind of like your standard like just metalcore fans, but people who also want something maybe a little bit new, a little bit fresh. I kind of mentioned earlier how I feel like the album is really two projects. The first half maybe catering more to people that really like just metalcore in general and giving it that little bit of extra flavor with the violin, but the second half seems much more of a step forward for the band, as if like the first half is kind of like, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is kind of what we've perfected, but the second half kind of showing us this is who we want to be moving forward. And I'm really excited to kind of see what direction they take that with, because I do feel that a lot of the people that I listen to or who are into metal, they kind of have that feeling about the second half that, yeah, maybe it's not perfect, but this is what the band really should be moving forward. Did you get that feel at all?
Yeah, but I am yes, curious to see where they do go in the future. But they kind of started that for me with the Heaven in Hiding album, because they do also have two instrumental pieces on there as well towards the end. So I feel like, I mean, maybe even that was just testing how, that went. And then this one with the three, I think it is. Yeah, but I like that. But I'm curious to see where they go.
Yeah.
I think we'll see more of it, to be honest. Like, I think that's what the vocalist really wants to do the most.
And I know you're excited to see them, hopefully one day.
Yeah, well, that's the feeling I mean, yes, anyway, but like with that ending of the Black Song from that 4 minute 31 part, that's not, I'm buying flights wherever I can, but it's a bit expensive. But I would do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they get a chance out here anytime soon. So
maybe one of the, like, you guys have some big festivals, right, that kind of pull in a lot of metal acts. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, we miss out on all the good things. All the big festivals that I go to are the ones overseas, but they are really good, the ones that we do have here.
Yeah, because they've been mainly touring in Europe. I know that right now, and for anyone listening, and if you're listening to this, today is what, April 26th, so around that time frame, they are currently touring within the US. They got a big tour going on right now. And I know that a lot of different venues were low tickets, which actually was really cool for me to see. Because I didn't know how, well known they were. And especially European metal bands, they have sometimes a little bit of a harder time. One of my favorite bands being Electric Callboy. You look at them in Germany and they're playing stadiums. They have like 12 to 15,000 people in those stadiums watching them. They come here, it's still respectable, but it's like, maybe 3,000, 3,500 people. And even though it's a good crowd, it's obviously a huge difference than what they're seeing in Europe. So I was curious to see Imminence. I've seen them like doing a lot of festivals. I've seen them doing shows, but they still look kind of like those kind of big club venues. I was curious to see how they would do here. And it looks like at least, they're close to selling out at a couple places. So that's pretty cool. I'm happy for them.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be curious to see as well. I feel a lot more people are getting into them. When I did start talking about them last year, there wasn't really many people that knew who they were. But now, based on a couple of groups I'm in, they are getting a lot more known now. Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess to kind of cap this off, I do got to ask though, was there anything about this album that didn't hit for you specifically?
Oh. I don't know if I want to answer that. So known, like musically, it would be just the logo, just something about it, like the artwork, sorry. But the album, no, it was perfect for me. I like it as it is. Yeah.
Awesome. That's it. So interesting. You're talking about like the album cover itself, because those 5 pieces are kind of like the symbols you were talking about, right?
It is, yes.
Okay. What is it about it that doesn't really stand out to you? Or
It's the color, actually. It's very, it's just interesting to me, the use of the color, and it does look a little bit, I'm gonna say like pixelated and a little bit not, like clear enough. That's not probably what you want to hear, but that's what I think about it. I would have, yeah, it's just an interesting combination of the colors they used and the quality.
it's the artist's perspective, right? But now,
Well, yeah.
now I can't stop looking at it because like
Well,
I'm
because
looking
it's
at
the
it right
black.
now.
I would think it would have been the one that they had in the video, the black, like just black with like the graininess would have been perfect for it. I just
Yeah.
don't get the green and the yellow kind of combination for what the album is.
I think they were maybe trying to give it a weathered look, but I can tell it looks like it's low resolution, right?
The word I'm trying to look for, sorry. It just looks like that to me. When I saw it, I was like, oh, nothing bad, like against whatever artist did it, just, oh,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Interesting.
it just doesn't
Interesting.
match the album, like, when you listen to it. It's just not, it doesn't match, for my opinion.
Yeah. That's an interesting call, man. This has been a great conversation because honestly, you pulled out so many things that like from the videos to the art pieces to like the poetry and the lyrics, just stuff that if it was just me here reviewing it, like I said, I'd be like fun, aggressive, brutal, beautiful, unique. Like this podcast would have been like 5 minutes long. But yeah, for me, the only thing I mentioned that just didn't hit was some of the what I considered at first kind of the pacing of the album going into the second half and the song structure. Now, I would have said before talking to you that I feel like some of those instrumentals should have maybe have been spread out a little bit more. Maybe we got one of them earlier in the album. However, what I don't think I took into consideration, which is what you mentioned, was just how important that instrumental is to the song that follows it.
Kind of like
And
a lot of pain and then healing.
right,
If that makes sense. Like when I said like life, death, hope and stuff, like when you do watch the videos and everything, it's like a lot of pain you get through, and then it's like in that continuum song, it's just, I don't know, healing you free kind of. And I feel like that's where the classical instrumental might come into it, like from my interpretation. So you get to heal.
exactly. I mean, if you were to tell me like, okay, take I'm gonna butcher it too, but Lapel du Vide, right? And the black and put it earlier in the album, you can't because that is an end to an album,
Yeah.
right? Can you take Cul-de-sac and the Call of the Void and put that earlier? Again, no, because that is a perfect halfway point of this album that I think transitions into the storytelling and experience that you're getting in the second half. And then Le Noir, which is essentially the black in French, like you can't put that at the beginning. You can't put that in the middle, that is the end of the album. So they probably took that into consideration when they were building it, maybe even themselves knowing like, hey, we got a lot of instrumental song, but this is the story we want to tell. And now that I go back and listen to it with that perspective, maybe I'll have a new appreciation for it.
It's very immersive.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, that's essentially our thoughts on Imminence the Black. Overall, we don't typically do ratings here, right? But if I had to give it a rating, I'll probably give it like a solid, probably 9 out of 10.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's definitely, in my opinion, when we use the word masterpiece, a masterpiece for me doesn't necessarily mean that this is a perfect album. This is just from a creative and storytelling and emotional provoking point of view. This to me is a masterpiece of an album. It's a huge success for this band, and I really hope that this puts them in front of a whole new audience, because they honestly really deserve it. And I really hope that they embrace what I consider like this second half, which is their, possible future, right? They're always going to have the metalcore kind of underlyings, but maybe they feel that they can experiment a little bit more and really focus on that kind of storytelling and everything. I think would be very, very cool.
I look really forward to seeing what they do after this as well.
Awesome. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining me for this. This was an awesome conversation. If anybody wants to follow Melissa and her art, her information will be in the description below. It's actually in the description of every video I ever released, because I give her credit for the amazing logo that she made me. But yeah, thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure.
All right.